Now, let's sew both parts together. The sewing methods for the ears of all four kittens are exactly the same. I will demonstrate with the ears of this orange kitten. Thread the yarn tail from one side of the matching colored yarn onto the sewing needle. The ears are sewn onto the left and right spots on the head. Sew the ears between rounds 1 and 2. Insert the needle into the first round. Then pull through the middle and pull out at any spot. Thread the other yarn tail onto the sewing needle. Insert needle from the second round. Pull out from the other side. Remove the sewing needle. One ear is sewn on. Use the same method to sew the other ear on the opposite side. Pull out the 2 yarn tails of one ear through these 2 spots. Both ears are sewn on. Let's deal with the yarn tails on the back side. Tie the yarn tails together in pairs. Tie a dead knot with the other yarn tails as well. Cut these for yarn tails. Tuck these to yarn ends into the fabric. Adjust the ears. The ears are now sewn on. Use the same methods to sew the ears onto the other 3 kittens. The ears of 4 kittens are sewn on. At this point, the common sewing parts for all 4 kittens are completed. Let's start by sewing up the orange kitten. First, make the eyes. We need to embroider 2 V shapes on the 5th round as eyes. Leave 1 stitch between the 2 eyes. Each eye spans the stitches. Take out the black yarn and pull out 2 strands from it. Thread the yarn onto the sewing needle. Next, find the center of the 5th round. The first round is here. Here is the middle of the 5th round. The middle stitch here is the skip stitch. Insert the needle from any spot. Pull the yarn out just above the 5th round. Insert beside 2 skipped stitches. And pull out below the 5th round. This will form a V shape. Thread it over to the other side. Insert needle by skipping 2 stitches. Pull the yarn out below the 5th round. Pull both yarn tails up from the same spot. Tie the 2 yarn tails into a knot. Cut off excess yarn tails. Use a crochet hook or sewing needle to tuck the yarn end inside the fabric. The eyes are completed. Next, take the pink yarn and pull out 2 strands. Thread these 2 strands through the sewing needle. Embroider the mouth on the round just below the eyes. Insert the needle from any point. Bring it out between the 2 eyes. Embroider the mouth in this way. Pull both yarn tails out from the same spot. Make some adjustments. Tie the 2 yarn tails into a knot. Cut off excess yarn tails. Push the yarn end inside the fabric. The mouth is now completed. Next, embroider the whiskers. Separate 1 strand from the black yarn. Thread it through the sewing needle. Find the position between rounds 5 and 6. Embroider a horizontal whisker. Insert the needle from any spot. Find rounds 5 and 6. Here, between the 5th and 6th rounds, pull the yarn out from the middle. Then pull it out from just below the 6th round. Embroider 1 slanted whisker. Then insert again. Repeat the same step on the other side. Pull both yarn tails out from the same spot. The whiskers are finished. Tie a dead knot with the 2 yarn tails. Cut off excess yarn tails. Push the yarn end inside the fabric. The head is now completed. Sew the head onto the body. The body is sewn between rounds 8 and 9 of the head. First, find rounds 8 and 9. Here is the first round. Here is the 8th round. Here is the 9th round. Between these 2 rounds, pull the yarn tail out from between these 2 rounds. Check the positions. Insert the needle from the match stitch on the body. Then insert needle on the head, pull the yarn out from the side. First, secure the 4 points of the body. Tuck the yarn tail of the body inside the fabric. After securing the 4 points, sew them up stitch by stitch. Sew the matching points like this until you finish one round. After sewing one round, pass the needle back and forth several times inside the white area. This helps prevent the yarn from slipping. Finally, cut off excess yarn tail. The head and body are now sewn together. Next, sew the front legs. Put a small amount of stuffing cotton inside the front leg. Then thread its yarn tail onto the sewing needle. Pinch it flat and sew both sides in this way. Then sew it onto rounds 10 to 12 of the front side. First, find rounds 10 to 12. Count from the very center. The very center is the first round. This is the 10th round. This is the 12th round. On these 3 rounds, insert needle from above round 12 and come out below round 10. Then secure both ends. Next, sew a few stitches toward the middle to secure it. One front leg is sewn on. Weave the yarn tail back and forth a few times. Cut off excess yarn tail. One front leg is sewn on. Next, sew the other front leg. The other front leg should also be stuffed with stuffing cotton, flattened and sewn first. Then sew it onto the center of the back side of the body. The front legs are facing the same side as the other 2 legs. It is sewn onto the last 3 rounds of the body, the very center of the body. First, secure both ends. Then pass through the middle to secure the center part. Finally, secure it toward the front. Thread the yarn tail through the fabric back and forth several times. Cut off excess yarn tail. The front legs are now sewn on. Next, let's sew on the tail. The tail is sewn onto the reverse side of the body. That's on rounds 15 to 16 on this side. First, locate rounds 15 to 16. Here is round 1. Here is round 15. Here is round 16. Between these two rounds, right in the center of the back side, thread the other yarn tail onto the sewing needle. Then insert the needle from this spot. Pull both yarn tails out from the same spot. Tie the two yarn tails into a knot. Cut off excess yarn tails. Push the yarn end inside the fabric. The tail is now sewn on. The orange kitten is finished. Next, sew up this black kitten. First, make its whiskers. Take out the head. Then, thread a piece of black yarn onto the sewing needle. The whiskers are embroidered above and below the 5th round. First, find the 5th round. This is the first round. This is the 5th round. Insert the needle from above the 5th round. Pull the needle out below the 5th round. Do it again. This helps prevent it from slipping off. Then cut it off. You need to repeat the same step again in the same spot. Insert the needle from above the 5th round. Pull it out from below the 5th round. Then repeat again. Pull it tight. Cut the yarn tails short. Fluff out these yarn tails. Carefully separate them. Then trim the whiskers to a suitable length. The whiskers are done. Use the same method to make the whiskers on the other side. The whiskers are completed. Next, sew the head onto the body. The head is sewn on the left side of the body. There's no exact round count here. Just make sure the head is sewn right above the legs. Pull it tight. After sewing, weave the yarn tail back and forth here several times. Cut off excess yarn tail. The head is now sewn on. Next, sew the tail onto the kitten. The tail is sewn on the other side of the body. The tail is sewn between rounds 15 and 16 of the body. First, locate rounds 15 and 16. The very middle here is round 1. Here is round 15. Here is round 16. Insert the needle between these two rounds. Thread the other yarn tail onto the sewing needle. Repeat the steps again. Tie the two yarn tails into a knot. Then, cut off excess yarn tails. Push the yarn end inside the fabric. The black kitten is now fully sewn. Next, we'll sew these two kittens with raised tails. The sewing methods for these two kittens are exactly the same, only some facial details are different. Let's first demonstrate the facial features of these two kittens separately. Finally, we'll use the Siamese kitten to show the same sewing parts. Let's start with this calico kitten. Take the black yarn from the material kitten, pull out one strand. Thread it through the sewing needle. Begin by making its whiskers. The whiskers are made on the same round as the eyes. Insert the needle from any point. Pull the yarn out next to the eye. Next, embroider another slanting stitch going downward. Repeat the same on the other side. First, sew a horizontal stitch, then sew a slanting stitch downward. Pull both yarn tails out from the same spot. Tie a knot with two yarn tails. Cut off the yarn tails. Felt the yarn end into the fabric. The whiskers are done. Next, let's embroider the mouth. Pull apart two strands from the black yarn. Thread the yarn through the sewing needle. Embroider a Y-shaped mouth between the two eyes. Insert the needle at any point. Bring it out between the two eyes. Embroider the mouth in this way. Finally, pull both yarn tails out from the same spot. The mouth is completed. Tie a dead knot. Cut off excess yarn tails. Push the yarn end inside the fabric. The Calico Kitten's facial features are now completed. Next, let's sew this Siamese kitten. Start by embroidering the whiskers. Separate one strand from the black yarn. Thread it onto the sewing needle. Insert the needle beside the eye and embroider a horizontal whisker. Next, sew another slanting stitch going downward. Repeat the same on the other side. Pull both yarn tails out from the same spot. Tie a dead knot. Cut off excess yarn tails. Push the yarn end inside the fabric. The whiskers are completed. Next, embroider the mouth. Separate the strands from the pink yarn. Thread both yarn tails onto the sewing needle. Insert the needle from any spot. Bring the needle out between the two eyes. Embroider the mouth in this way. Pull both yarn tails out from the same spot. Make some adjustments. Tie a knot with the two yarn tails. Trim the two yarn tails. Push the yarn end inside the fabric. Make some adjustments. The mouth is completed. The heads of the two kittens are completed. Next, use the Siamese kitten to demonstrate their common sewing parts. Sew the head onto this side of the body. The head is positioned just above the front legs. After sewing, conceal the yarn tail into the fabric. Thread it through several times. Cut off excess yarn tail. The head is sewn on. Next, sew on the back legs. The hind legs are sewn onto the body between the 5th and 6th rounds. Locate rounds 5 to 6. This is the first round. This is the 5th round. This is the 6th round. Insert the needle from above the fifth round. Push it through the other side. Then secure both sides. After sewing, hide the yarn tail. Finally, cut off excess yarn tail. One leg is sewn on. Use the same method to sew the other leg. Next, sew the tail onto the kitten. The tail is sewn on between rounds 2 and 3. First, find the space between the second and third rounds. This is the first round. Right between these two rounds. Thread the other yarn tail through the sewing needle. Pull both yarn tails out from the same spot. Tie the two yarn tails into a knot. Cut off excess yarn tails. Push the yarn end inside the fabric. This kitten is now completed. Please sew up the calico kitten the same way. These are the kittens completed with matching colors.